Welcome to my channel. I'm Scott, and in this video we're going to talk about SEC filings. So let's start with a high level and a little history on the SEC. So the Securities and Exchange Commission, they require public companies, company insiders, and broker-dealers to file periodic financial statements and other documents. So the SEC can only regulate public companies that trade in the United States. So if you're a private company, you own a deli in your town, the SEC cannot govern you. And if you're a foreign company and you trade in, say, the UK, the SEC cannot govern you. But if your company is domiciled in another country and you trade in the US, then the SEC does regulate over you. Lots of people rely on SEC filings. Investors, people working in finance, they need this information to make informed decisions on whether to buy a stock or sell their stock. And you can access all the SEC filings on sec.gov. The database that houses all the information is called EDGAR, the Electronic Data Gathering, Analysis, and Retrieval System. The SEC was originally signed into law by FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, and that was way back in 1934. So the SEC was created to help restore investor confidence after the '29 crash. The stock market declined 73% from 1929 to 1932. These are all the different filings I found. There are a lot of them, I know, and most of them you'll never need to look at. We'll talk a little more in detail about some of them, like the 10K and 10Q, which we talk a lot about on this channel. So the 10K is filed annually. A company's fiscal year end doesn't necessarily track the calendar year. Like for instance, Microsoft's fiscal year end is June 30th. The next 10K they file will be for the time period July 1st, 2022 through June 30th, 2023. Google's fiscal year end is 12/31 like most companies, so their next 10K will be for all of 2022. The 10K provides much more detail than a company's annual report, which is sent to shareholders before the annual meeting to elect directors. One of the main sections in the 10K is the business section. It provides an overview of the company's main operations. It talks about the products or services it sells and how it makes money. Risk factors is another section. It outlines risks the company faces or may face in the future. They also have a financial data section. This is not the financial statements. This is when the company handpicks certain financial information they want to convey to you. The MDA section is a popular section people read. It talks about the financial condition and results of the company's operations. And this is a good way for the company to tell their own story. Because even if a company reports accurate financials, it might not convey the right story. And then my favorite section is the financial statements. This includes audited financial statements, including the income statement, balance sheet, and statement of cash flows. And of course, there's other statements as well, like the statement of stockholders' equity, the statement of comprehensive income, and sometimes there's additional information that doesn't fit on the financial statements. That's usually called notes to the financial statements. The 10Q is submitted the first 3 quarters of a company's fiscal year, and the company must file the 10Q within 45 days of the quarter end. And it depends on the size of the company's public float. Float is stock that's held by the public. Companies that have a really low float tend to be riskier and more volatile. When the Reddit community wants to apply a short squeeze, they generally look for low float stocks, in addition to highly shorted stocks. So the 10Q is due 40 to 45 days after the quarter ends. The 10K takes longer to prepare, so that's 60 to 90 days. All companies are required to report relevant information regardless of their finances. So even if they have no revenue, they still have to report the same way as a company with revenue. You can't exclude information if you're not profitable, for instance. Usually the 10Q is unaudited, while the 10K is audited. It doesn't mean the numbers are wrong, it just means they're not blessed by an accountant. The 10Q is similar to the 10K, but just a little less information. So you have the same things, the financial statements, the MD&A, etc. The 8K are really important things to look out for. These are unscheduled material events. So if the company was going to make a big acquisition, they need to report this in an 8K. Or if the company is going bankrupt, or one of the subsidiaries is going bankrupt, then the company needs to let the investing community know through an 8K. if there's any really big impairments, change in accounting firms, anything the company determines is material. And a company can't wait too long to release an 8K. They have 4 business days. So it's a really valuable source for investors and researchers. If Google was going to acquire a really big company and they let people know through an 8K, you would hear this all over the news. But if it's a small penny stock, you might not hear about it at all. It may take a month or 2 for anyone to realize. So scouring the 8Ks, finding really valuable information, could give you a big edge on other investors. And by filing 8K in a timely fashion, they could avoid insider trading allegations. Say a company's CEO dumped 1 million shares of their stock, and the CEO avoided a big loss. But if they dumped the stock a few days after the 8K, they didn't do anything wrong, because other people had the same information as the CEO. But if the CEO dumped the stock a few minutes before releasing the 8K, that's a big problem. Now there is a big negative to all these filings. It costs money, you have to pay people to prepare the filings, and if you miss the deadline, then you have a penalty to pay. One reason some companies do not go public is all these filings. Say for instance there's a company with $50 million of annual revenue, and they were thinking of going public. And each year they spend $20,000 on a CPA to do their taxes. But if they go public, they're gonna have to hire 2 or 3 accountants at a full-time salary. So that could really eat into their profits. Plus it's a big headache to answer all the investor questions. So you have to hire an investor relations person, or probably multiple people, to answer those questions. So all these additional costs could set you back $500,000, and it might not be worth it. Proxy statements provide information to shareholders so they can vote at the next annual meeting. If you own common stock in a company, you get to vote on things. You get to vote on the next board of directors, for instance. Usually it doesn't matter, because there's always an investor that owns at least half the company's voting shares, so it's really their vote that counts. All the other votes don't matter. Forms 3, 4, and 5. Form 3 is required if an insider buys or sells stock in that company. Let's say Warren Buffett wants to buy 15% of a company. He has to file a Form 3 letting the public know that. So anybody who owns more than 10% of a company has to file a Form 3. Form 4 must be filed when there is a material change in the holdings of insiders. If someone forgets to file Form 4, they should file Form 5 at the end of the year. And the SEC only regulates the United States public markets. If you live in Egypt, it's a financial regulatory authority. If you live in Azerbaijan, it's the Financial Market Supervisory Authority of Azerbaijan. If you trade in Belarus, it's the National Bank of the Republic of Belarus. Canada has the Canadian Securities Administrators. UK has the Financial Conduct Authority. Germany has the Federal Financial Supervisory Authority. So I could really spend hours going through this whole list, but you get the idea. Lots of big companies trade in multiple countries, so a big pro is your stock is more liquid. A larger population of people can buy or sell it. A big con is it's really expensive to trade in multiple countries. You have to file documents for each of those countries. Even though there's lots of similarities between the documents, they are slightly different. And I've consulted for many companies. It's a real headache to convert the 10K to another country's format. So thanks for watching. I hope you learned something new. Comment, leave a like, subscribe. Talk to you soon.